Hi, today we'll speak about shall. Not about this shall, but about the modal verb shall. Nowadays, shall is mostly used in formal language, like in contracts or agreements, but that doesn't mean that you will not hear it in everyday conversations. Shall is an elegant little word, and we must know how to use it. Shall we begin? So, shall. Let's pay attention to these examples. You shall not be held accountable for this. We shan't or shall not support him in the elections. Shall I begin? Predominantly, you will see shall used to express two things. First of all, we can speak about the future tense in the first person singular and plural, or we can express a suggestion with the help of shall, like shall I begin? Shall I buy you a drink? If we are not talking about these two cases, we will use shall in documents and contracts, rules, regulations, etc. to express something that is obligatory, something that must be done on a particular condition. Shall is a quite formal word. You will probably most often hear it in suggestions, like the last question here, shall I begin or shall I buy you a drink? You might also hear it when people say I shall or we shall, using the first person singular or the first person plural to speak about the future. Otherwise, you can see it in formal documents, in contracts, in rules, expressing something that is obligatory. We'll speak about it later in detail. Shan't, a negative form, or shall not, is not very widespread. Shan't is actually not colloquial. You will probably only see it written. I will demonstrate what I'm talking about. Here we have some examples from literature. The Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte and Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. Let's pay attention to these examples. He says, she hates me and wants me to die, that she may have my money, but she shan't have it, and she shan't go home. She never shall. I shan't tell you where it is. It is our secret. Nobody, neither Hareton nor Zillah, is to know. Oh Lord, I am sure your mother can spare you very well, and I do beg you will favor me with your company, for I've quite set my heart upon it. Don't fancy that you will be any inconvenience to me, for I shan't put myself at all out of my way for you. You shan't talk me out of my satisfaction. I am sure it will all end well, and there will be no difficulties at all, to what I used to think. So you see how the sentences sound, yeah? So shan't is quite outdated, yeah? It is old-fashioned. It is more common in Britain than in the United States of America, and you probably don't want to use it unless you want to sound formal and old-fashioned. Shall can express 5 different things. So we can use shall to speak about future tenses in the first person singular and plural. We can use shall to make offers, suggestions, and give pieces of advice. We can use it for formal commands. We can also make conditional sentences with shall, and we can use it to give promises or to threaten somebody. Let's look at each of these meanings in detail. To form future tenses. To form future tenses, shall is only used when I or we is the subject, that is the first person singular, I, and the first person plural, we. I shall call you from the hotel is the same as I will call you from the hotel. In modern English, you can absolutely substitute shall with will. What do we have here? We have the future simple tense. We shall be staying with my aunt. The same as to say, we will be staying with my aunt. The future progressive tense. I shall not do your work for you. I will not do your work for you. The future simple tense again. By June, we shall have been married for 10 years. Equals, by June, we will have been married for 10 years. the future perfect tense. By the time this show begins, I shall have been waiting here for an hour. Equals, by the time the show begins, I will have been waiting here for an hour. The future perfect progressive tense. So you can use will instead of shall. Shall also expresses offers, suggestions, and pieces of advice. Let's see. Shall we see the ancient ruins? Shall we have a walk in the garden? Shall I bring you a cup of tea? Offers and suggestions. These are the situations where you will hear shall used most frequently, to suggest something. What shall we do if they disagree? Where shall I begin? When shall we inform them about our decision? Who shall I invite to the meeting? Are questions that you can ask when you seek advice. When you want to ask somebody's opinion about what the best thing is for you to do in this or that situation. Now, here we are talking about documents, contracts, things like that. Students shall remain silent throughout the examination. It's a formal command. Starting from Monday, a curfew shall be imposed from 11 p.m. until 5 a.m. You shall therefore obey the voice of the Lord your God, keeping his commandments and his statutes, which I command you today. Commandments. No person shall photograph, videotape, or otherwise record the image of a voted official ballot. A formal command. Lessor shall furnish lessee with copies of all property maps. Lessee shall keep all the leased premises in sanitary condition. The same. This is a sentence from the lease agreement. Promises and threats can also be expressed with the help of shall. I shall teach you a lesson. That's a threat. You shall regret this. Another threat. We shall punish everyone who disobeys. You shall be fined if you disregard the rules of this community. We shall get you a kitten if you promise to take care of it yourself. This is a promise. I shall never hurt you, I promise. Obviously, it's another promise. It will depend very much on the context, whether it is a promise or a threat, and on the intonation you're saying it with. Shall is also used in the first conditional. I shall contact the office if I have not received any information by tomorrow. You can also say, I will contact the office if I have not received any information by tomorrow. This is a real condition. We are talking here about a situation which may happen tomorrow. We shall get there on time if there is no traffic congestion. We will get there on time if there is no traffic congestion. The same. This is the first conditional. You can use both shall and will here. If our flight is delayed, we shall not have time to change our clothes before dinner. If our flight is delayed, we will not have time to change our clothes before dinner. Both shall not or will not can be used. However, pay attention that I use the first person singular or plural in all of these examples. You don't want to say he shall, because here shall expresses condition. We are speaking about the future, a situation which might happen in the future. So shall here is only possible with the first person singular or plural. Let's compare the use of different modal verbs here. I shall apologize to my sister. This is a future action and it's a formal sentence. You give a promise, a formal kind of promise. I should apologize to my sister. It's your personal belief or conviction. You believe it's a good thing to do, so you think you should apologize. I ought to apologize to my sister. I ought to. Again, personal belief or conviction. Ought to is a semi-modal verb, but it's a synonym of should. I must apologize to my sister. It's your strong belief or moral obligation. I will apologize to my sister. It's your desire or readiness to do it. It's what you want and are going to do in the future. Now, negative sentences. Students shall not interrupt the lecturer. That's a formal command. You will not interrupt me. I won't have it. That's an emotional command. Children shouldn't interrupt their parents. That's a piece of advice or a good thing to do. It is generally understood that it's not good for children to interrupt their parents, and the accused must not interrupt the judge. It's not just a good thing to do, but a prohibition. Yeah, so the accused are prohibited to interrupt the judge. This was all I had to say about the modal verb shall. Do subscribe to this channel for more grammar lessons, and see you in the next video.